Welcome. So you are at the Minnesota VR and HCI meeting for February, and we decided to try a hybrid meeting. We've been online for a while because of COVID, and this particular presentation comes with an art installation piece in the back of the room, so we wanted to give people a chance to try that out. So welcome. We are part of the IGDA Twin Cities, the International Game Developer Association Twin Cities chapter. Here's our schedule. We have made it to the 7 o'clock mark where we're just going to run through announcements and any community plugs. And then Matt will jump in with his presentation and we'll wrap up roughly 8:30. So IGDA TC meetings are open to everyone. We want to be safe and inclusive. If you have any issues, just let us know. We'll get on top of that. If you want to read the details, they're on our website as well. Our board is entirely volunteers. If you're interested in helping out, let us know. If you're interested in giving us topic ideas or possible presenters, don't feel guilty. Just throw them under the bus and give us their name and we'll talk to them. And yeah, especially if you're interested in serving on the board and organizing these kinds of things, we'd love to have you. So here's our regular schedule. We actually have 3 separate meetings every month. The second Wednesday is our game dev meeting. If you signed up on Eventbrite for this VR meeting and it's your first time, you'll get an invite to that pretty soon. So don't unsubscribe or you'll lose access to all the VR meetings as well. And then the third Wednesday, we have a Twin Cities playtest. That's online playtesting. And we can help you set up remote access so people can play your local game over the internet. And then here we are on the 4th Wednesday with the Minnesota VR and HCI meeting. When we're online, we are typically in alt space. And we've had some variety though. Last month, Patrick showed us a custom app. We met inside a custom app to talk about the creation of the app. It was kind of meta. Good.
It was very meta.
And IGDA is sort of the parent organization for everything we do. If that is something you do, you create games, consider becoming a member, and just mention us when you sign up. Funnels a little bit of funds to our chapter. Go ahead. All right, so announcements and plugs. We have one official ahead of time plug. It's on the next slide. So we have another VR group in the Twin Cities, happy to say. The VR AR Association has a Minneapolis chapter. And there's a talk coming up in March. So don't try to remember all of this. Just remember that if you type in Twitter, VR ARA Minneapolis, you'll get linked right to it. That's going to be an online event. Their last event was here a couple weeks ago, a month ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
About the metaverse. Good?
Good. Too slow. If you want to plug something next month, or actually before we do that, anybody in the audience here that wants to do just an informal plug, just talk to the group. You got something coming up or know of something? Nobody? Okay. Just let us know next month then, and we'll get you into the slides, or we'll try to get you on the mic to talk to the group. All right, onward. That was quick.
Yeah.
So you're going to wear this one?
Yeah, I'm going to mute this and put the mic on myself. All right. Check, check. Check, check. All right. All right, well, welcome everybody to REM5. This presentation is about quantum mirror VR, which is a component of something pretty special we have back there. So for those of you who haven't been to REM5 before, we do a few different things. We are a vertically integrated immersive tech company. And we kind of have 3 pillars of our business. The first is REM5 VR Lab, and that is, oh, sorry, I'm going to take my mask off just so you can understand me better. REM5 VR Lab is the building that you're in right now in St. Louis Park. And we do all sorts of stuff here, ranging from entertainment to corporate events and things like that. Our second pillar is REM5 for Good, and this is XR deployment for impact, social change, diversity, equity, and inclusion, things like that. And finally, REM5 Studios. We are a full-service development studio and XR agency, and that's kind of where I come in. Now, before I get into it, I just wanted to drop a shameless plug. We have an event coming up soon in March called Experiential Sensory Collective, also known as ESC. This is the third event in the series that we've done, and it's going to be on March 26th from 7 to 11 p.m., and it will be right here at REM5 VR Lab in St. Louis Park. I do have just a kind of a trailer video I want to show you guys so you can get a sense of what this is. So we're really looking forward to the third installment of that, and we like to get a little crazier sometimes. So our agenda for tonight, I'm going to give an overview of Quantum Mirror and then get into Quantum Mirror VR. It's important to differentiate that they're actually two different things. I'll get into some cool tech features, things that I find really interesting about this app, and I think you will too. There's some interesting stuff to learn. I'll go over some optimization techniques I used, and also a little bit of the development story. Sometimes it's nice to just get the human element of something, not just the tech. And then we'll get into some Q&A. And finally, all of you who want to will go back there and get your consciousness uploaded.
Wait, what?
So a little bit about me. I am lead developer at REM5 Studios. I'm actually self-taught. Once upon a time, I used to be a mechanical engineer, but I wanted to get into something a little more creative, yet still technical. Just used Google, YouTube tutorials to learn Unity and Unreal, and somehow ended up here. More recently, I just got my master's from Carlson at the University of Minnesota, and thank you. And some previous companies I've worked at are Pixel Farm and Wallride. So I've worked with some of you who are here, actually, and both excellent companies, great people. And I just love making crazy VR experiments in my free time. Some of my latest fascinations are what could be done with like social VR, multiplayer, and also compute shaders, which is a little more technical, but you can do some really crazy visual things with those on mobile hardware. And if I don't know you yet, I'd love to get to know you, so feel free to talk to me after this presentation, and or just hit me up online. I'll have my contact info at the end. So let's get into it. This is the Quantum Mirror VR team. Without these people, Quantum Mirror VR wouldn't happen. Adrian Stein is the creator of Quantum Mirror and really kind of dictated the philosophy of this whole thing. More on that later. Amir is our CEO. He's right there. And Brian is our director back there. And these two really had a lot of creative direction for Quantum Mirror VR and helped a lot with beta testing. So what is Quantum Mirror? First, before I get into the VR experience, I want to give you an overview of what Quantum Mirror is, because Quantum Mirror is not the VR experience. It's actually a infinity room, a reality-bending infinity room with audio-visual content. It's really unlike any other infinity room you may have seen. It's not like square walls with mirrors. From a top-down view, it's kind of a hexagon, but there's also mirrors at odd angles, so you get all these crazy dimensions, and it really just messes with your brain, and really excited for you guys to see it. Quantum Mirror was created by Adrian Stein. He is a Guatemalan new media artist, and he calls Chicago home when he's here. Super nice guy, super passionate about what he does, wears his heart on his sleeve, and uses that as a strength of his. REM5 first discovered quantum mirror in Chicago. Brian and Amir went out there to look at some various immersive art exhibits because we were kind of thinking about what we could do with this space back there. How could we activate it and make something really cool for people to come enjoy? So Amir and Brian saw quantum mirror in Chicago, and they got back and they would not shut up about it. They were showing me videos, and I quickly understood why they were so hyped about it. And we eventually saw, well, not eventually, almost immediately, saw an opportunity to build out a larger immersive experience at REM5. So not just the Infinity Room, but back there we kind of have a lounge and some more immersive tech stuff. And really we just wanted to help better deliver the philosophy behind quantum mirror and really add stuff that would complement quantum mirror. So here is a video that'll kind of give you an idea of what quantum mirror is. So pretty awesome. Adrian Stein designed that. I actually think he used Blender to lay it out, so fun fact. So now let's get into what quantum mirror VR is. So quantum mirror VR is the VR component of a larger quantum mirror experience at REM5. It is a 5-minute audiovisual odyssey. It runs on the Oculus Quest 2, and it is completely hand-tracked. So we don't hand anyone controllers back there, they just put on the headset. It's extremely surreal, and it's intended to kind of make you reflect on the blurred line between humans and technology. If you think about it, all of us are technologically augmented. We all have our phones in our pocket. We're smarter because we have instant access to technology. So these are some of the tropes that quantum mirror focuses on. And really, one of the purposes of quantum mirror VR is to acclimate people to the quantum mirror philosophy and prepare them for actually entering the Infinity Room. So here are some of the tools I used to create quantum mirror VR. I used Unity game engine with the universal rendering pipeline. I used Blender for any 3D modeling. I did quite a few of the assets myself and also used Blender to bring in Adrian's 3D assets, some of his 3D art. And another fun fact, Adrian is highly proficient in Blender, and he made all of the 3D animations that are in Quantum Mirror that you'll see himself. So I essentially had to take his high poly assets and get them to run smoothly in Unity for the VR experience. For audio, I used Ableton and Audacity. I know some of you know Ableton in this room. Yes, you do. Love Ableton. It's really good for special effects and things like that. You can apply filters over time, and just it's really good for game audio. Before I decided on doing game development, I actually considered audio engineering. I didn't end up going that route, but I kind of learned the tricks of the trade, and I use that when developing games today. And Audacity is just a great utility tool for audio as well. That kind of complements Ableton Live. It's good for working with just raw audio files, clipping stuff, and throwing stuff together. Big shout out to freesound.org. That's where I got all of the audio effects, the samples for Quantum Mirror, and then I could take them into Ableton and remix them into whatever I wanted, whatever kind of sound I wanted to make. And all voiceover audio is actually AI generated. And really this was kind of a good coincidence because, first of all, an AI voice is fitting for this experience. And second of all, our timeline didn't allow us to actually hire voice actors. So this was a big win. Essentially, Typecast, you just type in the audio you want spoken, and it says it, but it sounds better than traditional AI audio. It sounds like an actual person. So for optimization, I used RenderDoc, very powerful tool that lets you debug a frame. and the OVR metrics tool. And for distribution, we used Oculus App Lab to push builds to the headsets, which really make the process smooth. I can be up there, people can be back here. We hit a bug, I can just push a new update, have them restart the app, and we're good to go. And I guess one thing I didn't mention on here is for light map baking, I used Bakery instead of Unity's built-in light mapper, and I highly recommend that. I don't think I'll ever use Unity's built-in light mapper again after touching Bakery. They should just make it standard. And the final tool, a drill. So we actually used modified Bobo VR M2 head straps. They tend to fit people, a wider range of people, quite a bit better. And I attached headphones to them to prevent audio bleed. At REM5, we actually don't run anyone through an experience without headphones just because the audio bleed is very distracting for other users. And we added some flair to the headsets too. So I have a little montage of the construction process here. Right. So Quantum Mirror VR is broken up into 3 distinct acts. Act 1 kind of serves as an intro. It acclimates people to VR. Act 2 is the journey, and this is kind of the body of the experience. And Act 3 is the arrival and the jumping off point to enter Quantum Mirror. So I'll get into each one of these and give you some more detail. So the first act is the consciousness upload station. And really the purpose of this, when people put on the headset, they appear in this area. And it serves to introduce people to VR. Most of the people we put through this are first-time VR users. So we have to kind of acclimate them to even being in VR and understanding that it's, you know, sixed off, they can move their head around. It's not just a movie, they can turn and look at stuff. And another reason for doing this is to teach people to interact, specifically with their hands. We kind of have this mirror come up and you see a reflection of your digital self, and there's a little sense of play. You're told to kind of like move your hands around, and that just lets people know that, oh, I can use my hands to interact with stuff, and which they'll do in the rest of the experience. And finally, you upload your consciousness to the metaverse. And then you enter the journey. And the purpose of the journey is, first and foremost, to showcase some of Adrian's 3D art. Like I mentioned earlier, he did a lot of artwork in Blender for the Quantum Mirror itself, and I was able to pull some of that into Unity and use it for this experience. And another purpose is just to have some fun and trippy interactions for people to play with. Obviously, we want to amaze people with this experience and give them something surreal that they've never experienced in their life before. And finally, we wanted to infuse the narrative and philosophy into this section and really all of the experience. Quantum Mirror is about self-awareness through technology. So kind of when we first started planning this out, Amir, Brian, Adrian, and I sat down at a table and kind of hashed out what we wanted to do with this and make sure we were all aligned on the philosophy so that we're delivering his creative vision. And when we're through the journey, you go through a portal and you end up at the arrival. So this is kind of like a matrix construct style room that goes off to infinity. And we show Adrian's artist thesis for Quantum Mirror, which is kind of his way of describing its purpose and what it's all about. We want to signify that you have transcended and that you're finally ready to enter Quantum Mirror. And this is the jumping off point. The doors open, you are instructed to take your headset off, and the real life doors to Quantum Mirror are there in front of you waiting for you. So we've amazed a lot of people with this, and really it was just fun to do this because I've always wanted to kind of tie VR to in real life and find ways to intermix that, and I feel like we really succeeded with that here. Oh, and I have a trailer video to show you. So for those of you who are here, you're actually going to get to do the full experience. And for our online viewers, before I shut down the stream, I'm actually going to play a full walkthrough of the experience so that you're not missing out either. So now I'll get into some cool tech features. There's a lot of stuff in here that I think is really interesting and might be something you guys want to mess with too. So the first thing that we have to think about with a high throughput VR experience is how people are getting in and out and making that process easy. We want to make the workload really easy for our employees, our VR concierges, or in the case of Meg, our quantum concierges. And so really how we do this is you're able to detect and code when the headset is worn. And then you prompt the user to look straight forward for a few seconds. For first timers, this can take anywhere from 10 to 15 seconds. They put on the VR headset, and we really just need them to look straight forward so that all the action isn't tilted off to one side or the other. And then I perform a custom recenter when that progress bar completes. You cannot actually trigger a regular recenter in the Oculus SDK, at least not for Quest. You can for Rift, but not for Quest. Why is that? I don't know. I think Meta should change it. But once you're recentered, you start the experience, and then when it ends, they're prompted to remove the headset, and it resets the app to the beginning, ready for the next person to put it on. So really all our employees have to do is take the headset off someone, disinfect it, and then it's ready for the next user. So this is a fun one. This is a procedurally animated ceiling portal. This is the device that swallows you up when your consciousness is uploaded. And it's actually kind of a cornerstone of the app. It's like the first thing I built, and then I built the upload station room around it. But nobody noticed it. No one looks up in VR. People are too used to watching movies. I actually verified this with analytics. Only 11% of people see this. So, but luckily I was able to reuse this tech for the journey. We have kind of some hexagons off to the side that are moving to the music and use this same technology. So it wasn't all for naught. And I actually launched a tech demo on Twitter where you can use your hands to control the ceiling. In the regular Quantum Mirror VR experience, it does its own thing. You touch the upload letters, and it kind of raises up each letter you touch, and then when you complete the sequence, it comes down and swallows you up. But if you want to try the version where you can control it with your hands, I have it pinned to my Twitter profile, so just hit me up on there, and I will gladly send you the tech demo. Oh, and for the Unity nerds, here's the code. I'm going to skip past this, but you can always rewind this. This is recorded. You can go back and look at this later. I think this is a great intro to procedural animation for anyone who is proficient in Unity. So this is another cool tech feature, was an optimized mirror, a cheap mirror. So for mobile VR, it's really expensive to use more than one camera, and that's the traditional method of making a mirror. And it's even worse in VR because you actually will have 4 cameras instead of 2. You have one for each eye, and then if you're doing a VR mirror, traditionally you have 2 more that do the reflection. But in this case, if you want to make a really cheap mirror, you kind of have to have the right conditions for it. Luckily, I could plan this ahead and kind of design the room around it. So you start out by making a completely symmetrical room, and you place essentially what is a picture frame in the mirror. This is like the mirror frame, but really there's just empty space. You can see right through it. But because the room is symmetrical, it still looks like a mirror because whatever is on the other side of the mirror is behind you. So then you just flip the player's avatar across the center of the room. And I used Final IK to kind of get the positions of the elbows correct, and some fancy transform math. Flipping the Oculus hand-tracked hands was a little tricky, but through some trial and error, I figured it out. Transform math will always confuse me. But anyways, and just to put some icing on the top, I made some nice procedural animations to activate and deactivate the mirror. These panels kind of spiral outward, and I had to brush up on my hexagon geometry to pull that off. And for that dissolve effect, I used shader graph. So this is the Androgeny River. This actually visually is similar to something in Quantum Mirror, one of Adrian's scenes that he made. And we thought that it would be really cool to actually do this in VR in 3 dimensions that you're fully immersed in. So you kind of move your hands around and you're able to affect these androgenes, these androgynous beings that essentially just represent digital versions of yourself. And I accomplished this using shader graph. I used 3D noise with a color gradient that kind of shifts over time. And Unity actually does not come with 3D noise nodes. I don't know why. It seems like that should be in there, but it's not. But luckily, someone named Jimmy Kushny has a noisy nodes plugin for Unity if you want to do 3D noise stuff. And I also use vertex displacement. You can kind of see them kind of raising up, and that just kind of gives people a better cue that they're affecting them. And it is controlled by the player's hand position relative to their head. So I use the head essentially as like a world origin, and then you measure the hand from that, and then that is kind of like multiplied over a distance, and then you feed the world positions into the shader. So the shader just takes in 2 positions, and then they move in a really cool way.
Matt, that looks like a lot of polygons.
It is my most polygon-heavy part. It was over 1 million when I started. I had to heavily decimate this and also do some level of detail stuff to it. They kind of, you probably can't see it on here, but they appear kind of progressively, and no one actually looks behind them, but if you were to look behind, you wouldn't really see them. They kind of disappear after you go past them, and so they're more high poly the closer they are to you. And it was a performance challenge. I'll get more into that later when I talk about optimization. So this is another fun one. This is a puppeteer interaction. So there are copies of your avatar that kind of move in this choreographed fashion, and each avatar kind of moving outward has a increasing time delay. So you get this wave, and it provides a really good sense of play where you can kind of just see your motions. You can literally just do the wave with yourself or whatever you want. It's just a really playful interaction. And I was able to save some time making this because this really relies on the tech from the cheap mirror that I showed you, and some additional code on top of that for the time delay and kind of moving them around and scaling them and stuff like that. So optimization was a huge challenge for this one, and that is because I'm using post-processing on the Quest. So some of you may know that post-processing is a huge no-no for mobile GPUs because it just kills your performance. Mobile tile-rendered GPUs are really not meant to do post-processing, at least not yet. But really, I had to for this. It just looks so much better with the bloom. Without the bloom, we couldn't get this nice door effect or the glowiness of this Androgeny River, or this portal just looks really bad without bloom. And I used Cronect Beautify 2 to do the bloom. I found that every single other bloom plugin I tried, and I tried like 4 other ones, had really bad like artifacting, jagginess issues when you move your head in VR. Maybe they work fine for non-VR stuff, but this was a good fit for bloom in VR if you ever need to do that someday. So because I use post-processing, I just had to really, really heavily optimize every single other aspect of the app. So I'll go through each one of these, but to achieve full frame rate, 4 times anti-aliasing with post-processing, this is what I did. I used a 72 frames per second target frame rate. And for Quest, you can do like 90, or I think now you can do even more than that. But people don't typically actually notice or care about a higher refresh rate. At least your average person doesn't. So if you want to earn some performance, you might as well use a 72 frames per second refresh rate because that gives you more time to process each frame. And I also reduced the draw calls. I got the app down to about 25 draw calls, which I think is really good. And I did that by manually combining meshes and materials. There are plugins you can use to do this automatically, but I didn't have too much. I knew all the assets that I was putting into it, so I just did it manually. And I also turned off the skybox to save some draw calls because the background is just black anyway, so you can just set the camera background to black. Don't render the skybox, and that saves you some draw calls there. I spent a lot of time reducing shader complexity. And what I've found works really well is baking shader graph noise nodes out to textures. So a lot of the times for the nice metallic looking materials and stuff like that, I was using shader graph in Unity to generate a smoothness map. So really all you need to accomplish a metallic looking texture is a gray color and a nice looking smoothness map. So that can just be baked to a texture, and then you don't even need to use shader graph anymore. You can just plug it into Unity's default shader, and that is way more optimized. And in addition to that, I just spent some time simplifying all shader graphs. If you really spend some time on it, you can kind of find some corners that you can improve on, and also improve the look of your shader as well. And finally, where I couldn't get a target frame rate, I dynamically adjusted the render settings. So I haven't actually seen anyone else do this that I know of yet, but you can actually change the render scale and anti-aliasing settings at runtime. So if you know where your problem areas are and you just need to work those out and get a good frame rate there, you can kind of lower the render scale. During the Androgeny River, that is a very heavy high poly count scene, and that complex shader that uses 3D noise is occupying most of your view. So no matter what optimization did, I just couldn't quite get up to 72 frames per second at full render scale. So I kind of progressively, gradually drop it down. I drop it down to like 90, 80, 70, and MSAA down to 2x instead of 4x. And then kind of as you go out of the Androgeny River, you gradually just bring it back up. So that's kind of like a last resort type of thing if any of you need to pass all of Oculus's virtual reality checks. And finally, I reduced poly count by decimating stuff in Blender and removing any geometry that isn't seen. But really, most of the time, poly count isn't as big of an issue as people think. I think that people tend to fixate on it, but most of the time, the bottleneck is shader complexity, draw calls, stuff like that. But if you are bottlenecked by poly count, I think that you should know that, because you should know that you're bringing in super high poly models. So RenderDoc is awesome. I'm going to look like Charlie here when I explain all this. But essentially, you can use RenderDoc to, for those of you who don't know what RenderDoc is or haven't seen this before, RenderDoc lets you, on a PC with your Quest plugged into it, capture a frame, essentially take a snapshot. And then on your PC, you can step through each individual draw call and see how long each draw call is taking for your frame. So you might have to go back and look at this later. I might even do a whole video tutorial on this, but how to actually use RenderDoc properly is you capture a frame, and then you use the performance counter viewer, capture counters, and then that lists all the draw calls. You sort by clocks, and that is GPU clocks. Essentially, the higher the number, the more time that draw call is taking to render. So if you sort by clocks, you can see what's occupying most of your frame time, and then you trace that number to the draw call in the texture viewer, and then you see what material that object has, and that's how you know which material you need to optimize. So after optimization, using previous to optimization, this used a shader graph, and I baked it to a texture and plugged it into the Unity default lit shader, and I had a 67% performance improvement for that material, and I just did that across every other shader graph in my project, and kind of did the same thing for everything. So I also wanted, besides the tech, I just want to get into a little bit of the story behind the development. Sometimes we just focus on the thing itself, but everyone's got a life and all sorts of things going on, and sometimes it's just nice to hear about the timeline and how everything actually played out. So I actually had 1 month to get this thing done. That's a crazy timeline for a full VR project. So 1 month from the first code I wrote to launch, and I was the only dev working on it. And I want to make it clear, no one was forcing me to be the only dev working on this. At any point, I could have pulled out all the stops and got more dev help, but I really didn't know what I would ask someone to do, because we were really just kind of like forming this experience as we went. And I thought that I could get it done, and it ended up working out okay. Mentally, I prepared myself with these principles, and we all as a team pretty much agreed on this. We need to keep it simple, narrow the scope in. We have Act 1, 2, and 3, and limit all creativity into those acts. Don't let the scope creep. Use what I already have. There were certain instances where I could save some time by pulling in tech from other projects. For example, like switching from hand tracking to controllers, or I already had that tech from a different project, and there were some other opportunities. For example, I made the mirror, and then I could reuse that tech for the puppeteer sequence, so saving time there. I focused on what was actually important, and that is the core experience, the user experience. Optimization can wait, and I really had to just resist the urge to polish as I go. Sometimes that's tricky for devs because you know what's wrong with your app, but you just need to focus on what's actually important if you're going to meet a timeline. And lastly, just put in the time. If I got a 1-month timeline, I'm going to be putting some extra hours in. There were some late nights. But in this case, I didn't really mind it because this was a super fun thing to make. So here's how the development timeline actually played out. We really didn't have much for pre-production. Pre-production was pretty much the day before, sitting down at the table and defining what this thing was going to be. We just had some loose ideas before then. And we started production, and it was like, oh geez, I got 1 month to do this. What am I doing? We got into it. It started to go okay, kind of laid out each act and got it working. And 1 month in, let's roll, let's launch it. It's stable enough. And there is nothing like launching an app to find out what all your bugs are. So the very first day, ran into some bugs, but we had it on App Lab, so I actually had Meg running back from Quantum Mirror to the office saying, Matt, we just had this issue, like, what do we do? Like, okay, first of all, reset the Quest, and I'm gonna figure it out. So we pushed some live updates the first day, and one thing we quickly found out is that for a high-throughput VR experience, you absolutely can't use the Oculus Guardian. It loses the Guardian maybe half the time that a headset is put on. Maybe it's just because our lighting is tricky back there, but we find that Oculus Guardians get lost even in ideal lighting sometimes. So in order to pull that off, when you turn off the Guardian, the floor height can drift. Like sometimes someone can be up to their chest in the floor. So in order to account for that, I just added a consistent floor height from your head to where the floor should be on my custom recenter, and we were good to go for the rest of its life. So after bug fixing, it was polishing and optimizing it. Before I was able to fully optimize it, I just left the render scale at 0.7 and used 2x anti-aliasing. And you know, most people, your average first-time VR user doesn't care about that, and everyone had a good time. So development actually started out with a bang. The very first week I was working on this, I got rear-ended at a red light by someone who was texting and driving. And it put a nice dent in my laptop that happened to be in my backpack in the trunk. I was a bit nervous to turn it on afterwards, but luckily it did boot up, and it's still going here today. So as I was leaving town, I was actually kind of taking an extended leave to go be with my mom at Mayo Clinic. So I was on my way to Mayo Clinic when I got rear-ended. She had kind of a life-changing major back surgery. And so fun fact, Quantum Mirror was mostly developed from a hospital room. Up until launch, I had a remote work setup the entire time. And really this was nice because my mom enjoyed having me there. There's a lot of downtime at the hospital, and whenever I wasn't helping her with anything, I could just hop on this and get up when she needed help. And just to show you my remote work setup, my entire VR dev setup fits in one backpack. I use a portable USB-C monitor. It's just one cable that goes straight in, super convenient for on the go. And hydration. Speaking of which, I need a drink. So, being with my mom, she was actually the perfect beta tester for this experience because Quantum Mirror is a seated experience. She couldn't get up and walk around at all. So really she was the perfect test subject too, because we know we'd have people her age through Quantum Mirror. And I just want to say that friends and family beta testing is super underrated. If you have a limited budget or you're at a smaller company, you don't have a full QA team, but you can actually get most of the way there by just letting friends and family try out your stuff. You'll quickly figure out what's wrong with it. In the case of my mom, she could confirm whether my interactions were intuitive or not. And I actually have just a short video of her first reaction the first time she tried Quantum Mirror VR.
That is so
What do you think?
awesome. I'm like, I want to go there. I love it.
Yeah?
So awesome. Here I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, I'll just stay in this chair and just float around.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so cool. I'd be happy with just that.
Yeah. What was
great.
your favorite part?
You know, just like all of the people that were kind of like floating by you.
Yeah.
And the walkway, how you just seamlessly just are going down this walkway.
Yeah.
And then the one wall where it just kind of disintegrates, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like,
Pretty cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool that, you know, when this little block came floating up like this, and I'm like, what's it going to do? And then it had a handprint, and I knew instinctively, you know, just put your hand in there.
Oh, that worked, huh?
It worked.
Yeah.
I didn't even need to tell me anything. I'm just like, okay.
I was hoping that would connect.
Yeah.
Good.
It made sense to me.
You're a good beta
So,
tester.
Yeah. That was fun.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Good. So rely on your family and friends when you're making stuff. They're the perfect test subjects because they don't know the ins and outs of stuff. They don't use it like you do. So eventually, her surgery was successful. She got to a point where she could walk again. And this really just brought it full circle to me. It was a super high-risk surgery where I think her lower 10 vertebrae are fused together completely. And while this brings about limited mobility, it's going to give her better quality of life and less pain. So really, this was a special moment for me to have her here to see the finished product and actually go inside Quantum Mirror. And before I end the presentation, I just want to show you some fun stats. I hooked up Amplitude Analytics. They have a Unity plugin. And so far, we've uploaded 2,105 people, and only 11% actually look up and see the ceiling portal. Fun fact, as you're touching the upload letters, each time you touch the letter, the ceiling kind of raises a little bit, and less than 1% see that. So I put a check in for that too. Quick note on analytics, like if there's something specific you want to know, you can write code to check for stuff, and I think that's just really handy. So I just put a check to see if someone had their head tilted up after they pressed a letter or as it was coming down, and then that was how I determined whether people were seeing it or not. 74% of people touch the upload letters, even when she tells you to reach out and touch it. And 86% of people touch the hex panel to open the door at the very end, the one with the big obvious handprint. So what this really means is that there are a portion of users who you put the headset on and they just sit there with their hands like this and look straight forward like they're watching a movie. So you need to watch for that, because if you don't put a time limit to advance them after inactivity, they get stuck forever. So that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for coming and listening to my presentation. So before we go, I'm going to open it up for Q&A, and just know if you want to get in touch with me, that's my contact information. Shoot me an email, shoot me a tweet, DM, whatever. So I want to field a few questions from the live stream, if there are any, and some in person. So, all right.
How long is the whole experience, and did you guys play with the time, the length of it, based on the number of people who are going through? Or?
So the question was how long is the experience, and did we kind of play with the length of the time going through? I'm just going to repeat myself so online people know the question. But the experience is about 5 minutes long, and it really doesn't vary too much from that. A little more if people are just sitting there and not doing anything during the parts where you're prompted to perform an activity. But really that only increases the time length by about 20 seconds.
I'm curious about these avatars you have on the screen right now.
Yeah.
Skin mesh?
They are skin mesh renderers. I just kind of hooked it up to Final IK. You know, I was going through this at lightning speed, and actually what I actually did to make the avatars is I found an asset pack on Unity, and I took it into Blender. I used the FBX exporter to bring it into Blender. I removed all the geometry from the waist down. I modified the torso for it to be androgynous, meaning that it doesn't look male or female. And I retextured the helmet and the face, and I turned the face into a video screen. And actually, it's meant to represent intelligence, digital intelligence, and it's actually using a pattern that is in one of Adrian's videos for Quantum Mirror. You.
In the wave scenario, were the recursive mirrors of the subject's actual geometry, or did you use video planes of a camera rendering just one object?
So the question was for what you see here, the puppeteering sequence, the copies of avatars, was it an extra camera or a render texture, or was it actually geometry? And the answer to that is it's all geometry. So I was able to, it didn't kill my frame rate too bad. I actually had to do a lot of material combining on these avatars so that we wouldn't have too many draw calls. But yeah, it's all geometry and uses some custom code. And it stores the position and rotation of everything in kind of a list where it's like first in, last out, or I don't know, I'm probably messing that up. But anyway, it stores the positions for a certain amount of time in fixed update, and then you grab them at the proper time, and then that achieves the time delay effect.
That's so cool.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to check if anyone had any questions online, or if someone in the audience watching, they might know as well.
The only one was from Marty asking if there are any other installations of Quantum Mirror.
So Martin online asked if there are any other installations of Quantum Mirror, or if this is the only one. Right now, this is the only one, but we are exploring where the Quantum Mirror IP can go. So we'll see what happens with that. Right now, this isn't on the Oculus Store either yet, but we'll see what the future holds for the IP.
Was this exclusively Oculus Quest 2, or could you play on an Oculus Quest 1?
The question was whether it was exclusively Oculus Quest 2 or 1, and the answer is that it is exclusively Oculus Quest 2. I never tested it on an Oculus Quest 1 because I know we wouldn't be deploying it on Quest 1. And if we ever do deploy it to the Oculus Store, I'm going to have some work to do for optimizing it even further. Scott, did you have a question?
I had his question.
Okay.
Sorry, Scott.
I see one question here. What would you do different now? Oh man. I feel like we pretty much nailed it given the timeline that we had. I don't think I would change anything, to be honest. Any other questions in the audience?
I'm kind of curious in general, how expensive was the glow when you shut it off? Like, what was your overhead?
Oh man. This is purely anecdotal, but at least like 30%. Not really. I got into a conversation with the developer about how to optimize it further, but at that point I had gotten it up to 72, so I never took that conversation further. Yeah. You had a question?
What would you do if you had another 2 months to work on it? Yeah.
Okay. If I had another, the question was, what would you do if I had another 2 months to work on it?
Gifted 2 months after you finish it, so you're not
right.
expanding the project.
Right. So I'd probably bring more flair to the journey scene. Right now it's just kind of a black background, and there's really cool stuff, and I think it actually works because your attention is focused on what you're interacting with, but I think there would be some more opportunity to bring in even more of Adrian's art and animations into this experience. You'll see some of his animations in Quantum Mirror when you go in there. There's some really cool animated stuff that if I had more time, I'd maybe want to work with him directly on bringing that into this. Anyone else? Scott.
So, this is me being slow in the room again. So the Quantum Mirror that's back here is the thing that was down in Chicago that you guys originally saw. From the artist's idea now? Is it always going to have this as its introduction? Are they going to be joined together from now on?
Yeah, the question is, we first saw Quantum Mirror in Chicago, and it was just the Infinity Room, and the question was, moving forward, is it always going to be paired with the VR experience? And really, that's kind of Adrian's judgment call to some extent, but my answer to that would be yes. I couldn't see this running without the VR experience because it's. Oh, he loved it. Yeah. But yeah, it just complements it so well, and it really gets you in the right headspace and teaches you about the meaning of Quantum Mirror before you actually go inside. So I can't imagine, if we expand it anywhere else, I can't imagine the VR experience running without it. But disclaimer, that might not be the case eventually.
Forgive me for forgetting, but could you re-explain quickly what you had to do to optimize actual shaders? Because you didn't use like the regular graph, but you did something else. I forgot what you said.
Yeah, so for shader graph, the question was to explain optimizing shader graphs, that process. So what I did there is essentially I was using shader graph to create a noise map, like a specular noise map for creating a metallic texture. And in order to do that, I have to run a bunch of nodes and connect all sorts of stuff. And if you were writing this by code, you'd be coding a bunch of different processes in your shader, a bunch of different steps to output that noise map. But the output of that noise map can just be baked to a texture. So I actually found some code snippets online that allowed you to bake a shader graph to a texture, grabbed that, and I think I just used 1024 by 1024 resolution noise map, feed that into the default Unity lit shader, and then I'm no longer using shader graph at all for that material. And it saves a lot of draw time that way.
Another one from Marty. He wants to know if you considered trying to implement a VR version of the quantum mirror.
Okay, question from Martin online is if we considered creating a VR version of the quantum mirror. And I don't know, maybe it occurred to Amir or Brian, but I never thought about it just because that would probably require ray tracing, and then you need a beefy desktop computer to do that, and you're no longer running on a Quest anymore. But yeah, question?
I was just going to add something to that, you can touch on it since you have the microphone, but more like the quantum mirror was such an elegant way to actually present the quote-unquote metaverse metaphorically without actually putting something on people's head, like a VR headset. And since so much of what we do is introducing first-timers to these concepts, we actually, even if we could do the quantum mirror in VR, we would choose not to and still use this construct, because what it's done is those 2,000 people that Matt mentioned earlier, those are 2,000 people that have never done VR before, and we're able to come here, and when they're in the quantum mirror, they can take pictures of it and share it, which drives the pipeline to get more people to come in to try VR. So it's actually very intentional of doing something that was outside of that.
Yeah, so I probably won't, for the live stream, I probably won't be able to deliver everything that Amir just said, but essentially the question, or his answer to this question is, even if we could do this entirely in VR, we wouldn't choose to, because having someone go physically enter the quantum mirror is just a better experience for first-time VR users than just having everything entirely in headset. And also, it's a cool way to represent the metaverse. You literally step inside this infinity room with digital content reflected to infinity. All right, anyone else? There's still enough time for more questions.
Alex Gray had a question.
Okay, Alex.
I'm joking. Alex,
Oh, okay.
Mirrors and reflections and everything. He's got
Yeah.
a chapel of sacred mirrors. I was curious to convert this place to the chapel of quantum mirrors.
Okay, I'm not familiar, but I might need to get familiar on that. All right, so if there's no questions, we're going to run groups of 6 people at a time through Quantum Mirror. So you're free to leave, but it'd be really cool to stay and actually get to see it for yourself. So we'll cycle 6 people through roughly every 10 minutes. Up to you guys to figure out your groups. We're all friends here, so it's not a big deal who you go with. And, and for our online users, I'm going to end the stream soon, but before I do, just for the online users, I'm going to play a full video playthrough of Quantum Mirror VR. So I'm going to sign off to the live stream right now. Thank you all for watching. It's been great, and here is the Quantum Mirror VR playthrough.
Welcome to the Consciousness Upload Station. Please hold your hands out in front of you to familiarize yourself with your digital twin. Now, look forward at your reflection. Your new form represents your consciousness, enlightened and extrapolated by technology. To begin the upload, please reach out and touch the letters in order. Upload initiated. You are now ready to explore within your new state of being. In a very short period of time relative to their existence, humans have transitioned to a digital-first species. Every second of every day, humans tap into the vast network of connections, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. Ripples of digital content consumption and contribution with little consideration of transitioning power to algorithms. Welcome to the sea of androgenes. Reach out and see the effect you have on them, and how that resonates. Akin to the screen in your pocket, your social media activity, your vast digital identity. These represent digital versions of yourself. How many digital versions of yourself exist? Do they represent who you truly are? Or perhaps who you want to be? Now, exercise your perceived control of the figures by moving your hands. Each movement you make is delayed and amplified in the same way that social media creates repetitions of an aesthetic influence or idea. Just as an aesthetic influence or idea can spread throughout the network and create the perceived world around you. Humans must be made aware of this artificial shift in perception if they want to maintain their innate creativity and originality. The human code must be preserved. We think of ourselves as limited by our bodies, locked in and static. Endless dogmas have arisen from the idea that our minds are more powerful than the matter they are suspended in. Quantum Mirror brings the way we view our bodies into question by superimposing the body into the infinite states of our mind, and seeing the body as a vehicle for our minds to transcend space-time. Quantum Mirror proposes that body is soul, body is mind, and body is infinite. This is the birthplace of the body and mind connection. You are now ready to transcend. Please remove your headset and prepare to enter quantum mirror.